of lead gen and conversion mastery. And today we're going to be talking about how to recover from a shitty week. I don't know about you, but if you're in marketing, you're in sales, you're in real estate, there's some great weeks and there's some weeks you just feel like just calling it quits, ending it, moving to a different brokerage, switching something because you're trying to get out of whatever you're feeling of what happened that week. And sometimes it can be a compounding effect of what has happened over time. And then you're just in this moment where you feel alone, helpless, out of control, and you don't know what to do. And so what we want to do is we want to talk about when you're going through this mindset or this feeling or this emotion. And I've actually gotten quite a few phone calls from some people that I mentor and I coach from last week that are just had a week like this. And so I thought it would be important, considering we have an NLP expert here with us, Brian Curtis, that focuses heavily on mindset, runs a very successful team, probably goes through this himself and his team. Dealing with this is how to recover from just a shitty week. So, Brian, I'm excited to kind of dive into this. And why don't you kick us off? What is the first thing you should do when you're in that moment? Let's just say it's a Friday, you're going into a Saturday, and this is when things get crazy because now you got some extra time to think. There's the family thing going on, and I see a lot of people sometimes make poor decisions when they have a shitty week. So I just want to open it up and just for conversation. What's the first thing you think, maybe the first thing you should do when you have a really shitty week?
So I'm going to quote a friend of mine, honestly, a guy I haven't talked to in like 25 years. So he may have passed. I mean, it's been a long time.
Yeah.
But I named Dennis Dissing, and I worked with him when I worked for a company called Cooper Communities. And he used to say that the difference between the rut and a grave is the amount of time you spend in it.
Oh, that's really good.
I love that quote, and I feel like it applies here. And so I like to share it. But, the first thing that you've got to do is, do you have a process? And, it's funny because we talk about this. I call it recovery strategies, different things. Do you have a process? Because most people don't have one. Most people's process is, I'm going to wait for something good to happen, then I'm going to feel good. Well, what if something good doesn't happen for another week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks? Because we are in a leading and lagging indicator business, right?
Yep.
So let's say I had 5 this happened to one of the agents on my team, great guy. This is probably 4 or 5 years ago. He was having a month in December where he's probably going to make about 30 grand, like net to him. He's having a great month. 5 transactions, all 5 of them terminated.
Oh.
So about getting kicked in the gut. And, he was able to take some of the buyers and help them find another house. But my point is, he lost a bunch of business. And so here's the hardest part about this. The time that you need to double down and do the right thing is right after you get kicked in the gut, right? Because that's the hard. It's like, hey, I just lost $20,000, $30,000, however much it was. Again, it's 5 or 6 years ago. What I need to do now is go fix it. Now I need to go replace it. What I want to do is go get drunk. Not really. I'm not being drunk. What I want to do is find a way, and we all have ways to. I want to escape. And so let me start here. It's okay to escape. It's okay to say, you know what? It's Friday. It's 4 o'clock. I got my butt kicked all week long. Everything I did went against me. I'm punching out. Okay. That's okay. And it's okay to and I'm going to set a time for when I'm going to recover. And I know that sounds crazy. So I know you asked me this question. I know I'm not about to answer it, but here's the other problem. Why did I have a shitty week? And here's what I mean by that. When I had a shitty day, that's when I put my recovery strategy in place. Okay, well, that didn't work. I'm going to. So it's about identifying it at the beginning. That's my first thing is, don't let it become a week. Definitely don't let it become a month, and don't let it become a year. And, where do those things come in? I'll start with probably the best thing for me. If I had a crappy week, I made it through Monday, I got to make sure that I have a pregame routine come Monday morning. And that's the thing a lot of people don't have. I was teaching a class about this morning. If you don't have a pregame routine, you're basically hoping and begging that something works out. Well, and it will eventually. What goes up must come down. That's all eventually going to work. But to me, step one is accept the fact that real estate is volatile, right? It is. You're dealing with people who are in a high stress situation. You're dealing with the reality that one day I can make $50,000, the next day I can lose $75,000. It's happened to me. It's probably happened to you. So if you're going to be part of that game, you need to accept the reality that there's going to be days that you're not going to like. And what are you going to do when you get kicked in the gut? That is the big thing for me. And then I'm going to offer this, and I'll pass back to you. Who defines a shitty week? So everything in the world is a dichotomy. There's an interesting concept we could have an entire conversation about, but let's just assume that you guys are all going to agree. What's a dichotomy? Good, bad, day, night, evil, good, whatever you want to say. But here's the thing. We can create our own dichotomies the way we want them to. So I heard somebody say this one time about a training. The trainer said, yeah, we can either have a crappy training or a great training. And somebody looked at him and said, what if you just changed your dichotomy, changed your belief system around this? I can have a great training or a good training. What if we reframed it in our head and said the only option was that I would have an okay week if you need that. But having the idea that you're having a shitty week, and then what are you measuring to figure that out? So here's the thing. Yeah, losing $30,000 in a week, that hurt. Probably shitty. I'll accept that. But didn't you set 3 appointments with new listing people? Didn't you put a buyer under contract? Didn't you? So yes, some things happen that you didn't want them to, but if you're going to define them as shitty, then what happens is now all your energy goes away. I don't know about you, but when I feel like I got kicked in the gut, that's exactly how I feel. And I don't want to go do good stuff. I just want to, watch television, go ride my bike, hang out with my wife, whatever it is, but none of it involves working. So I guess my answer is, what is your recovery strategy? What is your pregame routine that puts you in a place where you're focused? And what frames are you holding? Is there actually anything that's a shitty week? I didn't get as much done as I wanted to do. Is that really a shitty week, or is that a week that you perform slightly less than you're going to perform next week?
Right. In other words, keep it all in perspective.
Yeah.
I think for me, one of the rules of thumb that I have is that I try to do is I try to not make any important decisions when I am in a shitty mindset. And that includes having a shitty week, because you can, because there could be a combination of things. It depends on the situation. But one of the rule of thumbs I have is try not to make any important decisions until I am in the right frame of mind to do so. Because what I see a lot of times happen with people that we mentor and we coach, they'll have a shitty week, and then all of a sudden you can tell their decision-making process is reflecting the feeling and the intensity of the moment of whatever they're feeling. And what I have seen and found for myself and for other people is if I choose or somebody else chooses to make a decision, and that heightened state of emotion, it's not always making a decision based on the reality, meaning zoom the lens back out, right? Before you make the decision, zoom the lens back out, because that intense emotion, which sometimes can serve us in certain situations, because a lot of times it's a survival mechanism, and that's why it kicks in. But a lot of times that survival mechanism is actually outdated. It was based on something that had evolved over time and not based on our current reality. Like, it's an evolutionary thing that it's not even real most of the time anymore. And so we have to be very careful we're not making some decision that's based on a survival mechanism that's not even reality. So like that's what I found personally, is like it's that fight or flight, decision making process that does not serve us a lot of times. So that's the first thing for me, number one. Number two, I like to ask why. I like to ask the question of why I am feeling such an intense emotion. Why I like to ask myself to help me come down from it. So let's say, like, all right, I'm not going to make a decision. Why am I feeling such intense emotions? Where is that coming from? And usually it's really interesting, because I don't know about you, but usually it might be hitting on something that's deeper as far as like a fear, or or something that is triggering something based, you and I talk about the human needs a lot. It's triggering something that is making us feel uncomfortable in some sort of way. And so we're trying to break out of that we want to break out of that comfort. And so for me, if I can just reflect and say, okay, I want to make sure that I'm not, that my, some sort of unnecessary level of fear is kicking in here right now, and that's why I'm feeling this. And then the third thing is I like to really, like, whatever decision that I'm thinking, I like to really just weigh it all out, positives, negatives. Should I make this decision at all, or should I just go in next week and continue to drive forward with the best routine possible, the most energy possible, keeping my team in a positive mindset, finding the wins through the chaos. And so, I guess that's how, how I've tried to do it, and then come in with a better plan for Sunday going into Monday. I don't know what your thoughts are on that, but
yeah. So I want to talk about some stuff that you brought up, and it's awesome.
Yeah.
So you talked about going into survival mode, and you talked about the purpose of, I'm going to call it your mind, not your brain. The distinction being your brain being the physical matter, your mind being what's in charge, for lack of a better way to put it.
Yeah.
You brought this up, and I don't think enough people consider this, and it's more prevalent now than it's ever been in our society. And what it is that your brain is to survive. Your mind's job is to help you survive. It is not to help you thrive. It is not to help you be successful. It's none of those things. It's to make sure you don't die. And I know they're like, okay, we're getting, as someone referred to it, the croc brain, right? That crocodile type ancient brain. Its job is to do, and by the way, there's an entire system. It's called the sympathetic nervous system, and that kicks in when you go into fight or flight. Yeah. Well, there's also, I think the number is like 1,200 chemicals that get dumped into your body when you go into fight or flight. And here's a couple other things to understand, just the physiology of it. People, when they go in fight or flight, they're like, man, my hands are cold. My feet are cold. Because literally your brain goes survive, 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 survive. Okay. And it takes all the blood, and actually it doesn't get cold. I apologize. It gets warm. I did that backwards. My apologies.
Like hot in the face. Like, right.
It's going to send all your blood to the important parts. Right. So you need blood in your feet to run, right? Mm-hmm. You need blood in your hands to fight. Now, we're not actually, well, most of us, at least I hope, aren't physically fighting, but your body doesn't know the difference. It sends the exact same chemicals as the tiger that's about to eat you, as the person who yelled and screamed at you and threw you into whatever thing. So understand that it's really important to do your best. And there's books. Matter of fact, I'm reading a book called Becoming Supernatural by Joe Dispenza, and he literally was talking about parasympathetic versus sympathetic. I was listening to it yesterday, so it kind of was cool. There. So, but it really is. We do not make good decisions when we're in our sympathetic nervous system. Parasympathetic, relaxed and calm. So, from a coaching perspective, the first thing that I'm going to ask somebody, if they have enough wherewithal to say, hey, I need to talk to somebody else, and that someone happens to be me, is there any baggage? And here's why. I want you to consider this. You mentioned this, but I'll do the bad example here. So this is the event, and I wish I had more contrast, but this is what I got sitting in front of me. This is the event. It's a small event, but it hurts. It frustrates us, whatever. We've got this. Here's what happens. This is an event that I have a little bit of fear around. All the other fear you've ever had in your life all of a sudden goes like this. Starts to remind you. It works together. It goes through. And so I'm not having fear about, whether I'm going to get this deal closed. I'm having every fear that I've ever had in my life. Now, that's an extreme. It doesn't always happen that much. But think about the person who yells and screams at their spouse because they left a sock on the floor. It's a sock, for fuck's sakes. Excuse me, I didn't mean to get there. It's a sock. There's no reason for us to yell and scream, but we've all done it over something that's nothing. What that is all your other crap is coming up. So step one for me is, okay, how do I feel about this? What do I have? Fear? Do I have anger? Do I have sadness? What is it about? Okay. And then I have processes, and I hope you all do too, to get rid of that so that I can go and then make good decisions. And so that's the first step for me. Is there baggage here? Am I reacting on my emotions, or am I using my logical brain? Because if you're acting on emotions, the only thing you're trying to do is survive. And survive. That's how we fire people we shouldn't fire. That's how we yell at people we shouldn't yell at. And we've all done that. So that's the first thing. And then my next question is what is your process for making a decision? And by the way, if you don't have a process, you need to build one. And obviously, you need to tweak it over time because it won't be perfect the first time. But my process for decision never, ever, ever consists of however the hell I feel, I'm going with it.
Right.
Never should do that. It's not about feelings, you know. So I think those things are important to take a look at.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that decision making, one of the things that I think that is a cancer is decision-making bias.
Oh God.
So oftentimes in that moment, you mentioned the word baggage or things that maybe have piled on. Like one of the things that I found, and that I try my best, and nobody's perfect, but like I try my best to not make a decision based on a personal bias of something that might have happened in the past, or something that's not necessarily logical, but more emotional based or emotionally charging, and be willing to live in that moment for a minute or a day or two. And I think and I think that there's certain decisions that need to be made with speed.
There is.
But there's also certain decisions that are harder to recover from, that maybe, is uncomfortable as it may feel, getting comfortable, being uncomfortable, just sitting in that process of thinking and analyzing and looking at things. And I'll go throw some things out there. Anything that can affect your business and life in a really big way. Partnerships. Who you're with, who you're with your brokerage, big decisions, right? Who you should maybe fire, who you should hire. What central operating system that you're going to use to run your business. And so if you think about these things, and then if I reflect on it early on in my entrepreneur career, I would say a lot of these decisions were more emotionally based. Yep. And then as I realized that that's probably not the best way to do it, considering the impact that it actually has on the whole, on your business and your life, is that maybe it's okay to just let the decision to process through the positives and negatives and ask people's advice and look at things from every angle, from a 360 approach first, and then make the decision. And because I think that, especially if you had a bad week, right? We're kind of cycling all the way back to having the bad week. I would just highly recommend that nobody makes big decisions coming off a bad week. Is let it process through a couple more days or another week. Unless it's absolutely critical, right? So thoughts.
Unfortunately, there's sometimes you have to make a decision and you're not going to be in the best place.
Yep.
But that's the exception, not the rule, right? And so a couple of questions you ask yourself is, will waiting cost me? So if I've got somebody who's an employee that I don't know if I should get rid of, whatever, is it really going to matter if I fire them on Friday or Monday? We'll just use that as an example. Probably not, right?
Yeah.
Probably I can actually go and do a bunch of work on Saturday and Sunday. And although I'm not advocate of working them on the weekend as much, but I can go do a bunch of work on Saturday or Sunday to ensure that that gets done well. So is there a cost for waiting? There always is going to be some cost. You and I were talking about some of the stuff a couple of weeks ago, like, hey, this project not getting done, that's hurting me. I need to get it done. Okay, great. That's fine. That's something you got to make a decision on right away, because it's literally hemorrhaging money, on a daily basis. I've had those same kind of things happen in my business, and those are important. So there's another question. Do you have people to bounce stuff off of? Because if you don't, then you may not be in the best place. And if you're not in the best place, you're not going to make a good decision. I've talked to this with people about negative emotions before. Like, everybody understands, most people understand if you're really, really, really pissed off, it's not a good time to make a decision, right? I think most people would get that. No one's tuning into this webinar to go, gee, I never thought of that, Brian. I guess that's not it. But what if you're just kind of, here's where you normally function, but you've had a shitty week and now you're functioning down here? Well, this doesn't mean you're going to make some colossally bad decision, but it also doesn't, you're definitely not your best. Yeah. Why would you make a decision that affects yourself, other people, your family, your business, when you don't feel right?
Yeah.
And, it's crazy. Everyone can understand when you're extremely pissed off, you shouldn't make a decision. But guess what? You know what frustration is? It's mild anger. You shouldn't be making a decision when you're frustrated. Sadness is another, thing, or fear. Okay. Just a little apprehension. That's fear. Okay. And again, people understand when I'm scared to death, I probably shouldn't be making some lifetime decisions, but what if I've got a bunch of apprehension? Should I make a decision? No, we got to get through that. So I guess my point is this: come up with a process, have people to bounce things off. Isaiah and I talk. Why? Because we're in similar situations and we don't have 500 other people we know who are in similar situations. You've got some peers, whoever they are, or maybe a mentor even. Bounce stuff off of them. Don't be so cocky as to think you've got it figured out. Like, I've been cocky at times, and every time I'm cocky, I got this. And then I'm going to come on and tell the story about how I screwed that up, right? So, if waiting's not going to cost you anything, wait a little bit. Make sure you're in the right place and get yourself through a process. Get mentors, get peers. Don't do this alone. You don't have to.
That's powerful. I think that's a great place to end it. And so just to summarize, is if you were having a shitty week or a shitty month, or you're just in a bad place, just highly recommend just take a step back, zoom out, look at, like Brian talked about, evaluate your mindset, and to make sure that your mindset's not functioning on a survival type of mindset, but one of abundance and prosperity, and think critically about what your next move is going to be before you make it, and make sure that you don't make that emotionally charged, but it's based on logic and not emotion. And I think that even just that basic structure would serve everybody well, including us. And this is a fun topic to talk about, because there's so much, it can go so deep, and there's only so far you can go in a 20-30 minute podcast. But we hope this has served you. You can be encouraged. And I think above all is, if you have that no quit mindset, that you're going to figure it out, that you're going to make the next week better, you're going to find the positive in the next week, and you surround yourself with really good people to help you through those things. I think that's a critical part of what you talked about, Brian, is surrounding yourself with really good people that can help guide you to come to the best decision possible and to have a better next week than the week before. Things will always work themselves out over time. And I think that's an important thing, is the decision being made on what you want over the next 3 to 5 years, or what you're feeling right now.
Yep.
And so anyway, we appreciate all of our listeners and the people that are watching this on video. If you felt this message hit home with you, we'd ask that you share it, and we'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.